The moment my wife looked straight at me and brushed off her affairs, nothing more than harmless entertainment, I felt something inside me collapse. It was like realizing the person sharing your home, your life, your dreams, was essentially a stranger. And painfully, that wasn't even the worst part. What followed after that confession changed everything I believed about us. For 9 years, I truly thought Sarah and I had figured out what made a marriage thrive. We weren't just spouses. We were teammates, confidants, the kind of couple people admired at dinners and gatherings. We had weathered job setbacks, family chaos, and all those small storms that either reveal weaknesses or solidify a bond. I genuinely believed our relationship was indestructible. Now, looking back, I can clearly see the moment things began to shift, though at the time, I was too trusting to notice it. At first, the changes were tiny, so subtle that someone who believed in his partner completely would never question them. It started with a phone. Sarah had always been relaxed about her devices. She used to leave her phone anywhere, on counters, on the sofa, and sometimes even handed it to me to read messages when she was busy driving. Then out of nowhere, the phone practically became glued to her hand. She would tilt the screen away from me, give small secretive smiles at her texts, and step into another room whenever it rang. "It's just work nonsense," she'd say with a quick wave, brushing it off. You'd fall asleep listening to it. Then came the girls' nights. She always had friends, of course, but these outings were different. There were unfamiliar names, sudden plans, and she started dressing as if she were heading to a nightclub rather than meeting friends for a casual meal. She'd laugh it off, kiss my cheek, and tell me, "Come on, everyone needs a break sometimes." And like a complete fool, I agreed, because that's what trust looks like, right? You give your partner room. You don't interrogate them. You take their words at face value. You believe them when they say nothing's wrong. If only someone had shaken me during that period. If only I had listened to that quiet warning voice whispering in the back of my mind. The voice that questioned why her girls' nights always ended past midnight, why she came home smelling like someone else's cologne. The night everything shattered started like any other, except she didn't come home until 2 a.m. I had been lying awake for hours, replaying every worry in my mind. When I finally heard her keys turning in the lock, something inside me snapped. "Where were you?" My voice came out softer than I expected, but it sliced through the silence like a knife. She froze. Her back stayed turned to me, motionless, for what felt like a lifetime. When she finally faced me, I saw an expression I'd never seen on her before. Guilt blended with defiance, as if she knew she'd been caught, but was angry that she had to admit it. "We need to talk," she whispered. And everyone knows those words are never the start of anything good. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the same place where we had once made plans, shared dreams, fallen asleep during movies. Tonight, it felt like a massive gulf separated us. "I've been seeing someone." Her voice was barely above a breath, but the words hit me like blows. The room spun. My chest tightened. My mind refused to accept it. "For how long?" I forced out, "Does that really matter?" She finally met my eyes. "It matters," I said, my voice cracking. "It matters a lot. How long have you been lying to me?" "Months," she admitted, and something inside me simply broke. Months. 4 long months of betrayal. 4 months of waking up beside someone who had already replaced me. 4 months of being played for a fool. But what still destroys me, what still echoes in my memory, was what she said next. The part that proved I never truly knew her. "Look," she said sharply, frustration creeping into her tone. "It wasn't a big deal. It was just something fun. A little escape. It didn't mean anything." I stared at her, unable to grasp the coldness in her voice. "Just fun," I repeated in disbelief. Our 9-year marriage, our promises, our memories, reduced to nothing because she wanted a distraction. Do you hear yourself? I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. "You destroyed our marriage for entertainment." "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic." She actually rolled her eyes. "People do things like this all the time. It's not like I fell in love with him. It was just physical." That was the moment I realized the woman I married had disappeared long before that night. Or maybe Maybe the woman I thought I married never existed at all. Maybe I'd fallen in love with a version of her that never truly existed, a character she performed for 9 years until the role no longer entertained her. "Leave," I said, my voice low and steady. "What?" She actually looked stunned, as if she expected me to shrug this off, to treat a betrayal like a simple disagreement we could brush aside. "Leave," I repeated. "Pack what you can tonight. Come back for the rest later. But I want you out of this house right now." The hours that followed, from 7 until 9, were a blur. She argued, insisted I was being extreme, claimed we could fix everything. But I was finished. I stood motionless while she stuffed clothes into a bag, listening to drawers slam, watching her storm out and slam the door behind her. When the house finally fell silent, I stood alone in a place that suddenly felt foreign, a space built for a life that didn't exist anymore. The weeks that followed were their own special kind of torture. Eating felt impossible. Sleep refused to come. I spent hours lost in thought, replaying our entire relationship on an endless loop. Were any of our memories genuine? Were there more affairs? How many times had she lied to me while looking directly into my eyes? I contacted a lawyer without hesitation. If she believed this was some temporary separation, a way to punish me or test my patience, she was mistaken. I wanted closure. I wanted an end. The divorce went through quickly. No children, no difficult property to fight over. She moved in with her sister and didn't contest much. Maybe guilt pushed her into silence. Or maybe she simply didn't care anymore. I didn't bother to ask. In the months after the split, I had to rebuild myself. Who was I without her? I had spent nearly 10 years seeing myself as part of a pair. Now I had to relearn how to exist as just me. I immersed myself in work and earned a promotion. I reconnected with old friends I had unintentionally pushed aside. I started boxing to burn off anger instead of letting it consume me. I traveled to places she had never wanted to visit. Little by little, piece by piece, I felt myself returning. Her betrayal, as painful as it was, somehow freed me. I'd been tied to someone who didn't truly value me, someone who could toss aside our marriage for a moment of excitement. Now I had a chance to find something meaningful. 7 months after she walked out, my doorbell rang on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I opened the door to find Sarah standing on my doorstep, and I barely recognized her. The confident, self-assured woman who mocked our vows was gone. In her place stood someone hollowed out, dark circles beneath her eyes, hair pulled back carelessly, none of the polished appearance she always maintained. "Can we talk?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please." Against every instinct, I let her inside. We sat in the same living room where she had confessed everything, but the energy was completely different now. "I made a horrible mistake," she began, tears already streaming. "The worst mistake I've ever made. He meant nothing. It meant nothing. And I threw away everything over something worthless." I listened silently, expression blank. "I miss you," she said, desperation cracking her voice. "I miss our life. I was selfish and stupid, and I took everything for granted. But I understand now. I know what I lost. Please, we can fix this. We can get help, counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll—" "Stop," I said gently but firmly. She looked at me with flickers of hope, and for a brief moment I almost pitied her. Almost. "Sarah," I said quietly, "you don't miss me. You miss the comfort I gave you. You miss having someone who loved you without conditions while you did whatever you wanted. You miss the safety you threw away." "That's not true," she protested. "I love you. You don't." I cut her off and stood up, letting her know this conversation had reached its end. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have betrayed me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have brushed it off as just fun. If you loved me, you would have fought for us before destroying us." "Please," she sobbed, reaching out for my hand. I stepped away from her touch. "I forgive you," I said softly, and I meant it. "Not for your sake, but for mine. I'm not dragging this anger through my life anymore. But forgiveness doesn't rebuild trust. It doesn't bring back what we lost. It just means I'm no longer letting this consume me." "So that's it," she whispered, her tears turning sharp with anger. "You're just throwing away 9 years." "No," I replied calmly, opening the front door. You threw away 9 years when you decided our marriage was worth less than a fling. I'm just choosing not to drown while trying to rescue someone who refuses to swim." She stood still, searching my face for any sign that she could change my mind. She didn't find one. As she walked out for the final time, a feeling washed over me, something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Real, steady, grounding peace. I closed the door behind her, locked it, and looked around at the home I was rebuilding piece by piece. It wasn't the life I once imagined, but it was honest. It was mine, and that was enough. People often say everyone deserves a second chance. Maybe that's true. But I learned something else. Sometimes the bravest choice you can make is walking away from someone who already had their chance and chose to throw it away. I chose myself. And for the first time in a long time, that choice finally felt right.